I am New York City-based psychotherapist Nikita Banks, a licensed clinical social worker, and I am your host of the Black Therapist Podcast, formerly Black in Therapy. The Black Therapist Podcast is a place where we will discuss the unique issues people of color face when dealing with mental health issues and mental health diagnosis. You can listen to our show on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Google Play. You can follow us on Instagram, the Black Therapist Podcast, or you can hit us up on our website and sign up for our mailing list at blacktherapistpodcast.com. Also, on our website, you can find the links to our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram pages. You can also email us show suggestions, general feedback, and any ideas that you have for, guests at blacktherapistpodcast@gmail.com. Welcome to our show. So we're in the final stretch of the year. You guys have made it to November, and I know what's really on my mind right now is the upcoming holidays and how I will celebrate. But to be honest with you, I'm feeling a little anxious about the holidays, and I feel like this is a normal feeling for a lot of my clients and a lot of the patients that I see. And actually, I was speaking to a colleague of mine the other day, and she was saying to me, we were discussing kind of like slowdowns for the holidays, because I feel like sometimes in my business they're like ebbs and flows, and I know like usually when I'll have a lot of clients, and I was like, the holidays sometimes for me I get a lot of cancellations or in the other places that I've worked. And she was like, really, the holidays are super busy for me because a lot of people either struggle with dealing with their families for the holidays, or wish that they had family that they were dealing with for the holidays, or they had significant anniversaries like anniversaries of deaths or those sorts of things for the holidays, and they're really truly mentally impacted, emotionally impacted with the upcoming holidays. So it got me to thinking kind of about myself. And so I feel like I tell a lot of my business on the show, but it's probably because I do tell my business on the show. But it's hard to talk about client work. It's hard to talk about, things that I'm not supposed to talk about. Like I have a Hippocratic oath that I've taken. And so I have to kind of be careful about what I share when it comes to clients. And so I end up talking about me, especially when it's only me. And so the holidays are coming, and for me, Thanksgiving is a great time to honor traditions. I like to cook, and I pretty much stick to my family's menu, whether I'm with them or not, so that at least I'm eating foods that reminds me of like when I grew up, and I'm doing the whole rigmarole around cooking and shopping, and it's really like a whole 2 months worth of like preparing for the holidays. And Christmas time, I like to spend time with my family, meaning my mother, my sister's children, my son. But for Thanksgiving, I like to just kind of spend time with my nuclear family, which is my son or partner or whatever. And this year without my father, it's just, I think I might have feelings when the holiday comes. I'm not really sure if I will, but it's something that I'm thinking about. So, I decided that I was going to do a show on this today because I felt like other people might need a word of encouragement on how to deal with the holidays. And so, with the Christmas season coming, because as I stated, I don't really have to deal with my family that much for Thanksgiving, but with Christmas coming, there's going to be travel, and I'm going to go to see some of my extended family. That's my plan. And so I have some anxiety surrounding some of those relationships. And I think people think, oh, well, you're a therapist, your life must be okay. Like, I utilize the theories and the things that I've learned to inform decisions that I make in my life, and to inform how I deal with people in my life, and also how I manage certain expectations of people in my life. But I'm really not the family therapist, and I really can't tell everybody in my family, ooh, that's messed up, you should go to therapy, because after a while no one's going to listen to you. And I'm not like, now that I'm a professional, I try not to give a lot of unsolicited advice, especially because I get paid to give advice now, and I get paid to kind of do these things. I try not to do that as much in my word. My God voice in me sometimes just tells me to shut up and let them learn it on their own. And so I'm trying to employ that with some of my family members. So there's going to be some anxiety surrounding dealing with certain issues and certain people as the holidays arrive. And I'm sure that this is the same or universal with a lot of people who are listening. And so I wanted to talk about what you do or how you prepare for going home for the holidays and dealing with the thoughts, feelings, and emotions that comes from this time of the year. So the first thing I want to talk about is dealing with a family member who has wronged you, or dealing with a family member that you have significant issues and problems with, because it's really hard to kind of pass the peas when, there's an elephant in the room. But I think it's important for us to start to acknowledge a person for who they are and acknowledge people's limitations. And so one of my favorite things to say about people when I know that what they do and how they present and how they show up in my life is not in alignment with what I want or hope that they will do, is to recognize them for their own people, for being who exactly that they are, and for respecting their limitations. So I'm not sure if I discussed it before, but I guess I can discuss it now. I try not to go around my family and diagnosing people, but to be honest with you, I have the knowledge, and sometimes it just informs how I have to approach some of my family members. So I know my father has, because he had military service, he had gone to see therapists in the past. I'm not sure what they diagnosed him with, but I think I remember recognizing that my father had a personality disorder. And so over the years, I had always wanted him to be somebody else. I had always wanted him to be responsible, or to be empathetic, or to show up when he said he was going to show up and do what I wanted him to do as opposed to what he wanted to do. And because I have the understanding of the diagnosis, I understand that he did what he knew how to do. And it was unfair of me to want him to be somebody other than he knew how to be. And so what I started to do was deal with him on his level and expect him to do what he was capable of doing. If this makes any sense to you. I couldn't expect that my father would do something other than anything that he had shown me he was capable of doing throughout the years. And so, there were times that he would surprise me and do something out of character. Those were really good days if they were positive, if they were positive things. But it was unfair of me to expect him to do what I wanted him to do only because I wanted him to do it, and I knew he wasn't capable of doing it. I kind of was just setting myself up for disappointment. And so one of the things that I would say in going into difficult relationships with friends, family, and whoever is learning to manage your expectations and learning to deal with the person on the level of their performance. And so it's a quote that I heard from Oprah, but Oprah said, Maya Angelou, is when a person shows you who they are, believe them. But if you have a long-term relationship with a person, and especially if it's family, you sometimes have needs tied into what you want them to do. I needed my father to love me. I needed him to be there for me when I called him. I needed him to show up for me. What I needed him to do, and I'm just throwing those things out, but what I needed him to do didn't mean that he could actually do those things. And so in going into the holiday, I want you to start thinking about how you have seen people in your life show up in a way that didn't necessarily cater to your needs, but see them with fresh eyes and see them for who they are and what they bring to the table, and manage your expectations when you deal with them. I hope this lands for those of you who actually need to hear what I'm saying right now, because I feel like this is a universal thing that happens in all relationships, and it doesn't really have to do with holidays, but as I stated, because there are these gatherings that are coming up, there are going to be some difficult times that you're going to have with people in your life, and you might want to start reevaluating from now what that source of the hurt and pain is. Is it really something that they've truly done to you? or is it something that you hoped that they would do and they weren't able to meet your expectation? And if it was the latter, is it something that you expected them to do that was out of the realm of their capability? And so I'll continue to use my dad for example. My father was a decent dad with me, but he was a not so good father with some of my other siblings. And so for some of them, they may look at it and say, oh, well, you know what? He was capable of doing X, Y, Z because he did it for her. But the history shows that if he hadn't done it for you, it's possible that he didn't know how to do it for you, with you. Relationships are reciprocal. And sometimes we have to do what we need to do to be able to get our needs met. So even with children, there's one child who may have a temperament or who may have a certain skill set where they're able to get certain things from their parents than other children. And I just recently had a conversation with my cousin. We started to discuss family and the relationship that he has with his mom. And from what I deduced about their relationship, I think that the requirements and the nurturing and the understanding that he had with her, he was able to pull out certain things from her in her parenting to get some of the things that he needed. It wasn't an easy road. It wasn't always perfect, but it was different. And you can be a child growing up in a household with two parents and three siblings, and each one of you have different experiences because of the roles that you play in your family. And so I also want to talk about that too, right? So each of us are assigned a role in our families, or we have roles in our families. And some of these roles are roles that we are assigned, right? Like I'm, kind of the oldest child of my father's children, and I'm the middle child of my mother's kids. So I'm like very middle childish with my mom. I'm boisterous. I'm outgoing. I'm like, I gotta always be seen. Hello, podcast. And so with my mom's kids, my role is different because my older sister had a lot of different requirements that were placed on her, and my younger brother has much different requirements that's placed on him. And so in my dad's side of the family, I also have a different role. And so some of these roles are assigned to us from young, but we don't have to agree to these roles. We don't have to continue to live in a place where we are taking on the roles that are assigned to us. We can change the narrative of who we are and how we are seen in the family. And it takes time, but we can define ourselves in these relationships. And so I'm in the process of thinking about how I actually want to continue on with the people in my family, with both sides of my family. My role as a mother has also changed as my son has gotten older, and the requirements of that role is something that I'm modifying currently. I'm laughing. It's not funny, but you think of your kid as your baby, and all of a sudden he has like a wife and he has like kids. I mean, he's not that old, but things change. And so being able to be fluid with change is something that you guys want to think about too. And as the holiday season approaches, forgiveness. In that conversation that I had with my cousin yesterday, I also thought about my grandmother's sister. My grandmother died when I was really young, but her sister was kind of like my Grammy. And so I don't have a lot of real memories about her, but there was like a family feud that happened, and I felt the need to take sides. In the conversation that I had with him yesterday, it kind of helped me rethink, like, well, I've kind of been mad at her all these years for something that she and I really didn't have any interactions with. I should probably let that go. And so I actually said a prayer. I mean, she passed away, but I actually said a prayer because I've said some really mean things about her to other family members over the years. It's not funny, but it really started me to think about taking more of an active role in why I have the negative feelings that I have about certain family members. And if possible, that I can look at them through a lens of empathy, because usually hurt people. And so if there's somebody in your life or somebody in your circle or somebody in your family who has done something that has negatively impacted you or in some way emotionally hurt you, hurt your feelings, or broke your heart, please, 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 before the holidays come, think about how a hurt that they may have gone through could have contributed to them doing what it is that they did to you. And if you can, without discussion, let it go. Just release it to the sky. Set some boundaries. Have a little, come to Jesus meeting with yourself and think about how it is and what is required of you for you guys to move forward in the relationship. Make sure if you're making boundaries, your boundaries have consequences. And if they cross the line of those boundaries, you decide and enforce how you will no longer tolerate certain behaviors in your lives. Now, I'm not saying forgive somebody that did something to you that, was extreme. And I don't even want to put a name to it or a thought to it, because you can forgive anybody for anything if that's in your heart and on your mind to do. However, there are some things that I think are unforgivable that I will keep to myself. And so whatever your bottom is, or whatever your deal breaker is, it is what it is. But just make sure that you're able to kind of articulate those things to that person and let them know, listen, I can't mess with you because of XYZ, but I'm happy you're here, or I'm glad that you're okay. You don't got to do it over the dinner table, but just kind of let them know, where you stand. But if there is room in the situation for you to be introspective and for you to think about how you may have contributed to the situation, do that. If there's room for you to think about what that person might have possibly done or been going through, or the hurt that may have impacted whatever decision it is that they made that impacted you in a negative way, forgive them, pray about it if you have to, talk about it if you have to, and let it go. Because sometimes we have to have the understanding to give somebody and forgive somebody for something that they never asked forgiveness for. But that doesn't mean you have to be a doormat, and that doesn't mean that you have to open yourself up and open your heart up and open your mind up and open your home up for disappointment, betrayal, and hurt to come again. Again, this is like a working list of some of the things that I'm personally going to be applying to my upcoming family functions and how I deal with certain people. Because I don't want to isolate myself from family. I love the holidays and I actually love being around family. And so there's no list of things that you need to do or that you should do, but these are things that I'm definitely going to be doing myself as the holidays approach. If at all possible, and a therapeutic intervention is something that you want to do between here and your upcoming holiday season, go on Psychology Today, go on Google, go on my website, and find yourself a therapist if you have to work through these issues, because you cannot outrun family. It is what it is. You are who you are. And there are some people that you're just going to have to be like, you know what? That's how so-and-so is. But in order to deal with them, you have to put yourself in the mental space, in an emotional space, to deal with them in a way that doesn't exacerbate the situation. And so my goal, especially for 2017, but for 2018 and beyond, is to have the best relationships that I can with the people that I love, no matter how limited they are. No matter how they're wired, no matter what their personalities are, or their personality issues are, or whatever their issues are, or whatever their stuff is. If I love you, I love you. And there is no middle ground with me. And so it takes a while for me to open up my heart. But family is something that I do hold sacred. And so for the people that are listening who don't have family, a family is who you choose sometimes. Sometimes we don't have the benefit of having great relationships with the family that we were born into, but you can also try to focus on mastering the relationships that you have with the people you invite into your family circle. And so for this Thanksgiving, I'm actually going to be spending time with one of my girlfriends that I've had for a number of years and her family. And I'm really looking forward to spending that time with them because I like watching their family dynamics and actually not having to be involved in it. And the things that I've suggested today are things that she and I have been talking about leading up to her family holiday, but also there are things that we've been discussing in terms of like me dealing with my family. And so I hope that this is helpful for those who are struggling with their relationships with their families. But if you are having those kinds of struggles, a professional can definitely help you sort some of those things out. And I'll tell you right now, as somebody who had the blessing of reconciling with my dad before he left this earth, thank God. And I'm in the process of healing some of my other relationships that are fractured in my life. And even if it's open a crack, even if it's just a slither of light coming through, if you have the proper tools and if the other person has the desire to have a relationship with you, little strides mean a lot. You've listened to another episode of the Black Therapist Podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Nikita Banks, licensed clinical social worker, and this is Black Therapist Podcast, formerly Black in Therapy. If you are looking for any information, any resources about today's show, or if you just want to drop a line and say hey and subscribe to our mailing list, you can do so at our website, blacktherapistpodcast.com. You can send us emails at blacktherapistpodcast@gmail.com. And if you enjoyed what you heard today, please like, comment, share, and subscribe because we want the show to grow as organically as we possibly can. And we cannot do that without you. Thank you for listening. Be well.